I'm Neal Brown. I worked at Spiceworks for 15 months, but full disclosure, I moved on to a different company called MyEdu. I'm still here to represent Spiceworks. If you have any questions about Spiceworks, I'm happy to answer them. Then the first half of this talk will be a brief introduction to Spiceworks for anyone who's never used it before or anyone who's interested in using it. And then the second half will be Puppet Enterprise on Windows primarily, with a goal of enabling remote management and remote logging and what's the word? Okay, great, thank you. Remote management of Windows machines. So, does anyone here use Spiceworks now, or have you heard of it in the past? Because it's a free network management app. If you are managing Windows machines, it's tremendously useful. If you're managing Linux devices, Macs, Cisco devices, printers, it will detect and register those apps remotely over the network. It uses patented WMI scanning to contact and remotely manage Windows devices. They have a lot of developers working on, for example, HP ILO. I know we've talked about doing NetApp devices in the past. I don't know if they actually have a NetApp yet to develop that for, but it's on the roadmap. So no one here has used Spiceworks before? Okay, great. So it's a free app. This is a canned presentation. I'm going to skip a lot of it. It's a broad general overview of the Spiceworks app, and instead of just talking about it, I'll go into it and show it to you the useful features that could be useful on your networks. I would guess that even though you may not be aware of it, Spiceworks would be present on most of your networks if they're large organizations. We find that sometimes it's initiated by desktop support, sometimes it's initiated by sysadmins, sometimes it's initiated by security or auditing, but most people will come across a use case for it. It has so many capabilities that, for example, if you just needed a free help desk, for your users to submit tickets, just download it and use it. It'll authenticate to AD and give you a free help desk, and that's all you have to do. But it will also do quite a bit more for network management. It's in use in every country in the world, in organizations from the U.S. Army to Goldman Sachs to a mom and pop gas station, just because they have three PCs that they need to keep up to date. So its primary use case and something that I'm going to concentrate in here on is the inventory and monitoring. It'll also do things like purchasing. There's a community.spiceworks.com, where you can ask and answer SMB-oriented IT questions. And there is a social aspect to it where if you prefer, or if you like to do product reviews or read product reviews, they have one of the best organizations for reviewing SMB-oriented products and services and recommending IT products and services. So they have big backers like Unitrends, Dell, HP are the three big ones that come to mind, aside from all the big AV vendors. If you have heterogeneous networks, you need to be concerned about antivirus, and they have relationships with Panda, Trend Micro, Avast, and of course the really big corporate AV security vendors like McAfee. So any one of these, the reason that I bring up Spiceworks in this forum is that any one of these components to it might be useful to you, and in fact is probably already in use on your networks if they have Windows machines at all. The purchasing is pretty new. So say, for example, if you are in an environment where you need to buy a pre-configured or pre-specified set of components for a new salesperson, needs a laptop, a mouse, a phone, a laptop case, you can write out a quote for that. Spiceworks will automatically transmit the quote to any number of vendors that you specify. CDW, PC Mall, PC Warehouse, Dell, SHI, Newegg Business, and get you quotes on all that. So right there, you're using a free app to get a great deal on stuff that you're already purchasing. So the inventory and monitoring is what I'll focus on today. And I can show the live interface for this, but because of the network that I'm on here, I don't have any hosts to manage to show you like active management. But I can certainly go through the interface and demonstrate anything in the interface that you might be interested in. And also, it can either run its own LDAP server or back to AD, your existing Active Directory authentication system. And the dashboard is intended to give you a one single pane of glass overview of your environment, including all managed servers, which of course includes Linux. The Linux monitoring will either be, if you prefer, you can have it SSH into the box directly and pull whatever statistics you like as a user, not as root, because we don't want root on your network, or SNMP, just like Cacti or your existing SNMP monitoring system. And is anyone here in a end user support type environment? If you need a help desk, I've personally found myself in this position multiple times. It's a free help desk where your users can go to a URL that you choose and propagate, and then open tickets for you. The purchasing, this is newly added. For example, if you have a printer on your network, it will report without any configuration on your part at all. It will query the printer, report its toner status, and enable you, if you wish, to automatically buy, and if you want to, set up touchless, basically like zero-click reordering, if you want to. Like for example, if anyone here has used a NetApp, they'll do that kind of automatic servicing where the machine will request its own parts and they'll ship them to you. Spiceworks will enable that for far more devices. And then there's a mobile app. They're always updating the mobile app, so the capabilities are constantly in flux. But they're supporting all the major mobile platforms now. And of course, it's a free download. There's no like premium, subscription or anything like that. It's completely free. And then the community is one of the more active IT-oriented, SMB level-oriented web forums on there. Having worked at Spiceworks, I can say that if there's any feature that you're interested in, they will implement it. The development, they have a huge development team, probably 40 or 50 people, well, plus QA, and constantly implementing features that users request. And it's also completely scriptable. If you need to add a capability, there's a plugin system, and of course there's a free directory of plugins available on there. They also do, in partnership with vendors, a lot of webinars and training, and one of the really interesting things about Spiceworks is that it has completely free support. If you have any problem with it, you can call, even though it's a free product. And if you're interested in a particular vendor's product, the vendor will have a rep in the Spiceworks community who will work with you to resolve your questions, if you want to, get you over to sales, but also just answer questions in the community. So are there any questions about Spiceworks that I can go into first? And I'll give a real brief overview of the UI. So this is the dashboard, and I'm running it through IE, although it does support Firefox. And Chrome does work, but is not supported. So I ran a real quick scan of a small network, and as you can see, Spiceworks does sometimes fail to recognize all devices. This is an IP scan, kind of like, let's see, not Nmap, because Nmap is optional. If you want to, you can turn on full Nmap, but this is just doing TCP/IP stack fingerprinting and attempted queries of certain pre-known ports. So for example, if it finds a machine answering on Windows NetBIOS ports or CIFS ports, then it'll categorize the machine as Windows. Then when it discovers a device, it'll go in and pull as much configuration information as it can, the OS, the vendor, the serial number, if it's a known manufacturer. If it can log into the machine, it'll pull the Dell asset tag. And let me show the alerting. Okay, I'm sorry, there's no alerts in this, in my current Spiceworks install. But an alert would be, for example, if it discovered low disk space. And that could either be a Windows machine or, for example, a Mac. In my current position, Spiceworks reported that my boss's Mac had low disk space, because in this instance it was able to log into the Mac via SSH as a user, not any privileges, but the user could still run, DF. So yes. So the primary, that's a good question. The primary use case is agentless. It goes out over SSH and the Windows management ports, which is what I'm going to go into in just a minute. But there is an optional agent in cases where your user is disconnected. So for example, if you have a remote user with a laptop, they only, for example, they only come into the office or they only get on the VPN a certain amount of time. You can put the agent on their machine, it'll store the data, and then it'll transmit it, whenever it's able to connect. And the agent is Windows only at this time, because, again, I wouldn't say that it's not that other platforms are secondary, but the primary platform for Spiceworks is Windows at this time. Macs and Linux machines, they can absolutely be scanned, and a lot of information can be pulled. But Windows, the remote management, which is what I'm going to go into, the WMI, provides you a huge amount of information, kind of like Factor for Puppet, except that it's a more extensive view of the machine. If you want to, or if anyone's interested, I'm sorry, I could pull up the WMI Explorer and show you all the information that's available through WMI.
How does this scale?
That's an excellent question. There are networks running thousands of clients with Spiceworks, but the app is it's really a self-contained desktop app. It's not a client-server app. So you'll need to run it on preferably not a domain controller, but a machine. You know, obviously client OS is fine. Does not need a Windows Server OS at all. But the performance of the app is going to be dictated by the memory and CPU resources of that client machine. It uses an embedded database, not a real like SQL Server database. So the performance, based on the number of clients that are reporting, it's actually kind of the same issue as Puppet, store configs. Because everything is going into that embedded database, it'll slow down the longer you run it and the more clients you have. If you need to skip machines, you can exclude them, and thus you eliminate that as a performance degradation. And if you don't need the older auditing or performance or alert or monitoring data, you can simply flush it, and then you back up to full speed. To go back to what I was saying about the user requests, having it backed by a real database, whether it's MySQL, Postgres, or yeah, exactly, SQL Server will be the first choice. Probably like SQL Server Express, or let you plug in your own, is really high on the list. There are some developers that worked on that during kind of like a hackathon a couple months ago, but they have this like business requirement for having the download be very small and self-contained. So to do an add-on like that that we couldn't do as a plugin, it would actually be a second version of the app. They have like from the very top, they have a business restriction that they can't add in something that big. So that's absolutely on the drawing board though, is being able to back to a larger database. So I'm a Linux system administrator. I mean, I have a MCSE from like 1998, but I had been on Linux for 12 years, purely, never touched a Windows machine. And so if I found myself in the situation of having to manage Windows machines, I would pick up Puppet, because Puppet Enterprise does now support Windows. But I'd also be interested in something like this that could do a lot of that remote reporting for me without me having to know all of the WMI stuff. Oh, I'm sorry. I have 2 copies of this running. I'm sorry, you can tell how often I do PowerPoints. And the viewer doesn't do all the save your position and all that. So if you are interested in running Puppet on Windows, it's a single-click install. Literally, the only thing you have to know is the name of your Puppet master. Ruby is in there. All of the Puppet Enterprise agent only requirements are all rolled into the download. Let's see if I can show this. Sorry, I was just trying to show the PE downloads. So you can go directly to the PE downloads anytime. You don't have to register or anything like that. Is anyone here currently a Puppet Labs customer? Okay, great. So you guys have a login, you know, to where you can go and get the installer. But this is an open site. Like, you know, I didn't log in or anything. It's just puppetlabs/misc/pe-files. There's only one disadvantage to this site. The disadvantage is they only push the latest, you know, installer. So the Windows package is the last in the list. I think there's a little bias going on there. But that'll be a regular exe. One of the things that I decided to bypass in this presentation was an unintended install, like doing an MSI, but Puppet Labs documentation has a full walkthrough on doing unintended install to Windows. Does anyone here already run their own WDS or, I'm sorry, what's it called? System Center server for doing deployment on Windows?
I don't use it.
Okay, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm not, that's my perspective coming into this is I'm a Linux admin and I'm just trying to get off the ground, you know, with doing the Windows stuff. So Puppet Labs publishes a registry module that is specific to Windows. It will do nothing for you if you're not managing Windows hosts. Is anyone in here not either managing any Windows machines or even interested in managing any Windows machines? Because the registry module is probably not going to be very useful to you. And then to enable remote administration, there are a handful of things that we need to do. There's not quick, easy remote ways to enable this stuff on Windows. One of the unique characteristics of the Windows platform is that it doesn't have, for example, SSH running by default. You just can't simply log into it remotely and treat it just like you would a Linux server where you can just hit it remotely. A lot of the WMI stuff is running, but is blocked by default by the Windows Firewall. So we're not going to go through. I mean, if at the end someone would like me to demonstrate installing Puppet Enterprise, I'd be more than happy to do it. But it's a straight up Windows app install. Just the default Puppet master name is Puppet. So you need to have a DNS alias for the name Puppet or have a host file entry for Puppet. And if anyone would like me to demonstrate putting in the host file entry on Windows, I'd be happy to do that too, because that's tricky. It's a weird Windows security feature. So the number one thing, or I'm sorry, the first step to using the registry module is to install this on your Puppet master. Your Puppet master must still be Linux. There is no Windows Puppet master at this time. It's the agent only. If you run this command on Windows, I can do that now. This is the Windows command prompt. Make sure when you're running on Windows, so you can do this two ways. You can create a shortcut that automates this for you, or you need to right-click on the exe and do the run as administrator. If you don't, Puppet will still run normally in a sort of a no-op mode. So it'll check in and it'll report and all that, but it won't execute your manifest the way you want it to. So if you accidentally attempt to run Puppet module on your Windows client, you will get this fairly unfriendly message. I'm sorry the lights kind of wash that out, but Puppet module is not yet supported on Windows. This is a single command does everything that you need. It does the download, it does the install, and it sets up the class for you. Second manual step is to assign the registry class in the console. If you're not a Puppet Enterprise client, if you're interested in seeing the interface, I'll be happy to demonstrate it. If you want to assign the class manually in your site.pp, you assign it just like any other class. It's just called registry, and you're going to include it in your node definitions, just like any other class. If you want to do it through Puppet Enterprise, there's a add class button, lower left-hand side of the main interface, and you'll click add class. The name is registry. Currently, Puppet Enterprise doesn't dynamically pick up new classes, so it's not going to do this for you. Register the class, then go to your node, and in the classes, right here, enter registry. It'll complete it for you. So type a few letters, and it'll complete. It'll add that class to the node. Now we're not in this example. We're not actually doing anything with the registry module. We're just registering it. The point of this is, once it's registered, Puppet Enterprise has plugin sync turned on by default. If you are on open source, you need to turn on plugin sync, and then your node will download the registry module and get it ready for you, because it's an extension of the default Puppet install. It has a whole bunch of extra files that need to be downloaded from the master to your client. So this is a real brief overview. I recommend the TechNet article on Windows Firewall settings. The point of this is, the important salient point is that you must explicitly permit remote management in Windows Firewall. The second thing that we need to do is turn on DCOM, the Distributed Component Object Model. This is a Microsoft remote management. I'm sorry, I don't know if it's specific to remote management, but it's a prerequisite for Microsoft remote management. We can do that with a Puppet module, and I'll have the module code in just a second. Otherwise, you will not be able to connect with WMI. This is the module code that you would use. This registry key and registry value are specific to they're specific to the registry module. If you attempt to use registry key and registry value without the registry module being loaded, it will fail. It will give a uninformative, very bizarre error message about could not parse. It will say could not parse definition for node on line 1, because it literally can't do anything. So in addition to turning on DCOM, we need to permit it through the Windows Firewall. I'm going to run through this because this is optional. If you need, depending on the security requirements of your organization, you may need separate rules for each one of these options. DCOM, WMI, there's a WMI callback sync interface that you have to turn on, and there's also outgoing WMI. This is totally optional. You can skip this and do it all at once with one command. I just wanted to specify them out just so you could see that there are in fact 4 distinct rules. This remote callback sync is part of it, and then outgoing, because we're changing the firewall rule from dir in to dir out. And this is all spelled out in TechNet, and if you search for WMI Vista, this is what you will get. So all you need for enable WMI is to do the group Windows Management Instrumentation parentheses WMI. The parentheses WMI are required. And then this is a kind of ugly hack where we're attempting to not execute the rule add repeatedly if it already exists. But there's no negative effect to running this multiple times. And if you'd like me to, I'll demonstrate it being run. Then if you attempt to run this on a client, such as Windows 7, it will fail because this is for server remote administration. Has anyone here ever used the Microsoft Server Admin, the MMC? It's kind of like the old Linux conf, like way back in the day. It's an attempt to be an integrated one-pane view where you can do everything for your server. That's what this is. Okay. So the only other thing was I had a code for remote desktop. Are there any questions? Is there anything that I could demonstrate? I'm more than happy to show you Spiceworks or anything regarding the WMI stuff. Or I can show you the server admin. Okay. Thank you very much.